Hi there, thanks so much for coming along to our latest Five from the Archive. This time it's with the wonderful Sandra Dan, who's new to Camversation. Not only did we overcome a massive time difference between Sandra and I, but I had 2 power cuts in the UK at the time of recording this. Sandra is wonderful, she pulled it together, she's an absolute professional. Her images are well worth looking at. She's also got a new presentation, brand new presentation just for Camversation, running in July, along with a later series this year as well. Fabulous stuff. So, well, what I will say, Sandra, is not only are we here at different parts of the world to record your podcast, but this is the second time we've tried to record your podcast because we've had a power cut in the UK.
I know. Hold on a minute. Somewhere didn't pay the bill. That's what it was. See? You have to laugh, Mark, you know.
I know, absolutely. And the reason that we're actually running this podcast like this is because there's such a big time difference between Sandra and I that I've woken up really early this morning, dedication to the cause. Sandra's got the long straw. I've got the short straw. Sandra, do you want to remind us what time it is in your zone again?
It's going on 4:30, but I will say, Mark, next week I've got the short straw. I'm up early next week, so we're working team effort here.
We are. And actually, this is why we're bringing Sandra in to talk about her images, her supposed 5 favourite images from the archive. But I think there's going to be a bit of movement with that 5 from the archive because Sandra will present Camversation next week and a series later on as well. So, Sandra, it's wonderful to bring you on board and share your fantastic work with our community. It really is. So before we get started, Sandra, before we get looking at some of your images, I wonder if you're able just to share with us a few minutes about your background, your history, how you got into photography, why you're so passionate about it, really.
I started photography in 2012 when I did what I call my mature age working holiday experience, where I moved to New Zealand, lived there for about a year, took up landscape photography. Never used a camera very much in my life. And so landscape, came back to live in Australia, and I'd been bitten by the bug of photography. So started to do landscapes, travelled around the world, entered international competitions, was in camera clubs. But I started to get a little bit bored, and I say bored because I've always loved what I call arty. I did art at school. I loved working with colours. I did an interior styling course. That was meant to be my career change. Colour, I was in my element. I was one of those kids that loved colouring in the lines. So I did all of that. And then I started to play with what I'd call composite imagery or altered landscapes. And what I did was use my landscapes, and then I might cut out a house and put a house in, and might put a tree in, or I could, my technical term, whack in a cow, whatever I wanted. And it was letting my imagination roam. And I'm very much about that, is let your imagination roam. And sometimes as adults, we forget to play and the joy of just creating, and that's what I'm about now. Moving forward, I started to experiment with mixed medium, and it was very much about getting digital art elements from Pixel Squid, which was well before AI. So started to download different things that I could not photograph. So I had the vision, and so I started to play with this. Moving forward, I got into AI or art generation. And for me, using AI now is about, I create the background that's in my imagination. I'll create something that I will never be able to photograph. So, for example, I was binge watching Sherlock Holmes. And so I wanted to create some images with Sherlock Holmes, old London town. I'm not going to photograph that because you've got the modern elements. So what I tend to do is that I'll create all the backgrounds, the elements, all the bits and pieces, go to Photoshop, and that's where I create an AI composite. I don't just do an AI image. So I add my style to it, my colour, I add textures, I'll whack in a giraffe, I'll do whatever my imagination lets me, or wherever it takes, or what inspires me. And I think that's very much where I'm at now, is that I'm not playing by rules, Mark, because to me, being in competition, you play by the rules. That's the rules. But for me now, the gloves are off. And so if I want to put a giraffe that's flying in the sky, I do. And people will say to me, but why did you do that? And I go, because I can. And it's very much about, some people look for reality and some people look for non-reality. And I like whimsical, surreal storytelling. So that's a little bit about me, where I'm at.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And on that note of playing, that kind of being in that zone and playing, do you find yourself, well, not do you find yourself, how often do you find yourself just getting lost when you are in Photoshop and you've got the world and the kind of almost the universe at your disposal with regards to images and ideas? How
Yeah.
do you find yourself lost there?
For anyone that's watching that's a photographer that is a landscaper and they stand at this magnificent vista and you get lost in that moment looking at this beautiful landscape, you're concentrating on your camera, you know, the apertures, all of those, but you're lost in that beauty. That's how I get creating digital art. I get lost. I just go into another zone and I just play. It's also good, takes the stress away. It's good for the soul. It's good for the mental health, just to play. Because way back is that I would produce images for competition. Now it's fun and enjoyment.
Yeah.
And so answering in that, I just wanted to give those two comparisons.
Yeah.
All that.
Thank you. Because I don't think there is a division between play and a particular genre of photography or a particular genre of creativity. But I think some people do feel that in order to play, it has to be more realistic or something like that, which I don't think it does at all.
No. What speaks to one soul will work for that person. What speaks to another soul, we are all different. If we were all the same, we'd all live in a little box. That's just mine.
Yeah, life will be very dull. Very, very dull. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
So we're going to get a chance to see a bit of your work now and some of your work next week and later on in this year as well. So at the risk of another power cut, I'm going to hold my fingers, cross my fingers, and I'm hoping that everybody who's watching crossing their fingers as well.
I'm going to start with this one, Mark, because this is my little whimsical, the quirky side, and I've called this image Mr. Pigden. And there's a story to this. I came across a video clip of an English footballer called Ian Wright. I'm not a big football fan, but I watched this video clip where he was talking about his teacher, Mr. Pigden, and how he inspired him and helped him with his football, or what we would call in Australia soccer. And I was so inspired, so moved by this story. And the video clip was he was standing in a stadium, and then all of a sudden he heard a voice, "Hello, Ian." And he turned around and there's Mr. Pigden. And Mr. Pigden had on a scarf, not what I would call an older generation scarf and hat. And the respect that was in Ian Wright's eyes as he saw him, he couldn't believe it. And it inspired me to create this image. And so my bird here is Mr. Pinton with his scarf, with his little cap, and he's standing out there and he's just looking out. Now, why did I create that? That story moves me, and that's where inspiration can come from. And I wanted to play. Now, my style is very soft, muted colours that have got some depth, but I use lots of textures. I whack in different elements, and this is one image that had a story to it. And I love looking at Mr. Pigden. I have little fond memories of creating him because I had to get him right, and I had to find the letterbox and had to find the right tree and the tree house. I also say to people that if you think this is real, we need to have a little bit of a chat, because this all comes from my imagination, all because I saw a video clip that moved me and I wanted to create. I think that's what happens for me.
Lots of people watching may or may not know that I used to be a primary teacher and then a primary teacher educator. And I've seen that clip that you're talking about, because we used it with our students to show them the impact of teaching. It's a profoundly powerful clip. And if anybody is watching this, go and have a search for it on YouTube. It's phenomenal. Even brings tears to my eyes now. I'm interested in how you got from that to this. And I'm sorry if you're about to talk about that, because it's just fascinating, your journey to get from what you saw in your mind in connection with that image of Mr. Pigden in the stadium. It's just fascinating.
So I'm going to just show you quickly. That's what I started with. That was my base image. It's a texture I've created. I put in the fence. I'll do that very quickly. Tree house. Now, I knew that I was going to use Mr. Pigden. He was in my creative stash. I can't just have Mr. Pigden standing there. Where would he be? And so I go and look in my creative stash and I think, hold on a minute, he's a bird. Oh, okay, a birdhouse. Oh, hold a minute, he's standing outside his birdhouse. He's got a little fence. And then I've got some foliage in there at the base. He's the hero, the star character, Mr. Pigden. And so then I thought, he's out, he's got in his mail. Where do I get these ideas? They just pop in my head because I let my imagination just roam. And as a child, Mark, I loved to read, and I think, has that influenced me? Just looking at different things. And I put a letter in, and then I put a door in, because you had to have a door. You can't have an open door like that. And I've just then used different colour grading, textures, different adjustment layers. Now, when I looked at this, I felt there was an imbalance or a negative space on the right-hand side. And so that's where I put the tree in. To me, that balances it out. And there's Mr. Pigden in his glory.
Yeah.
And I still look at that image and I'm still very happy with it. So how did I get there, Mark? I'm not putting obstacles on myself. I'm not going, oh, but this doesn't look real. I'm building a story in the mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that's how it all evolved. I could have put more birds in, but I thought Mr. Pigden doesn't like any more birds. Now, yep, I'm having fun with this and it tells a story, but there's a moral to it.
Of course.
And I was inspired by a very moving clip, and I do suggest you go and have a look at it because it is really good.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Now, I know this is only the first one and I can't keep you here for this entire session on the first one, although I would enjoy it.
Yeah.
Especially as we've got a connection and we haven't planned this in advance, so I had no idea Sandra was going to talk about that clip. How did you know when to stop, Sandra? Is that an easy question to ask? I don't know. How did you know when it's finished?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot when I'm teaching or when I'm doing presentations. And the only way I can say is how long is a piece of string? And sometimes I just look at it and I go, yep, that speaks to me. Now, when I take that tree layer off, I look at it and I go, I'm happy with him. I'm happy with the colours. But it just seems too much negative space over on the right. Maybe I should have put the tree house there. But I'm doing this subconsciously. That's when I go, I'll put the tree in. Yep, that's it. I've got what I call the composition triangle. And I talk about that there's a triangle, the tree house, the tree, and it all leads down to the bottom of the triangle is Mr. Pigden. And so it's a composition triangle, I call it. And that's when I think it speaks to me. It's got balance. I'm happy with the colours. And it's just a thing. It's when you pour hot water into a cup to make a cup of tea. You know how much you want in that cup. And sometimes you think, oh, no, I need a little bit more, and you put a little bit more, and then you go, I'm done. And that's the best analogy that I can use for this one.
Absolutely superb image to kick us off. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a very interesting one. This one is called Escape. And so I've gone from something light and frivolous to something that has a story. Now, when you look at this image, what's the mood? What's the atmosphere? And what is the story that I'm trying to tell? And I was inspired by a documentary video clip again. Inspiration can come from anywhere. And it was, look, I'm going to say what it is without getting into any sorts of discussion. I watched a video clip of when the war in Ukraine started. And there was a journalist there talking to some people. And the response was, we had 5 minutes that we had to evacuate. And we had to pack our life's belongings in 5 minutes. And then it got me thinking, as an adult, what would I pack? And as a child, what would I pack? And so this inspiration came from what would a child pack in their suitcase in 5 minutes. And so that suitcase, the teddy bear and the books represents what a child would pack to leave. The room, I wanted to be desolate. I wanted it to be dark, but the focus on the suitcase. But I also put the light on the bed. I actually put a curtain over the window. This is a base photo that I had. And then the suitcase, the teddy bear, the books, and the curtain were all what I call digital art. This is well before I started dabbling with AI. And so I put all this as a composite. I played on the light, the crack in the wall. I just put that in as a Photoshop brush. And the bird, to me, it was, again, I looked at it and I thought, what's missing? And at that time, my signature piece was to put a bird in somewhere. And so I put the bird. But when I looked at it, I thought that bird is pointing to the window for escape. But the hero to me is the story of the suitcase, the bear and the books. So someone might look at this image and go, it's a little bit dark, or it's just a bear in a suitcase. But again, I was inspired by a story that impacted me, and I thought, how can I express this? And this is what I've come up with, Mark.
Yeah. And it's an absolutely beautiful image, and the stark contrast just showing your range as well.
Yeah, thank you. There's lots of textures in here, lots of colour grading. I struggled to blend the teddy bear in. So sometimes when you're playing with these kind of images, you have a vision, you have your imagination. And I always say to people, imagination and skill set, you've got to get them working together. So I had to work on a few skills, pull a few tricks of the trade out, as the saying goes. So again, inspiration from a story.
Have you ever found, on that notion of skill set, have you ever found that, not necessarily now, but in those earlier days, did you hit the limit of your skill set and struggle to get to where you want it to be at all?
Yes.
Because I know Photoshop's evolved a lot since, over the last 10 years, but did you ever find those limitations?
Yeah, I found the limitations that I had the imagination and the vision, but I didn't have the skills in Photoshop. It wasn't Photoshop, it was me. I am very much about investing time in learning that if you only create an image once a month or every 6-7 weeks, and some people enjoy that, but for me, I wanted to improve my skills. Coming back to what you were asking, Mark, is that when I was entering competition, I would get feedback, your tones are muddy or this or whatever. And that then pushed me to learn more skills in Photoshop. And I also think that for me, and it's my personal journey, is the variety and the diversity in my images, if I look back, they've all given me different sets of skills. And that's where some people go, "Oh, I can't do it." And you've got to invest the time in the skill set. If you really want to produce art, and this is what I call my type of work now, is it's art, you've really got to spend that time on learning. Some people, I'm quite happy, Mark, sitting at a computer for half an hour, 40 minutes creating an image. I know others that will sit there for days. I think, oh, no, I couldn't do that. If I get the urge to create, I've got to get it out of the system. Yeah. Once it's out of the system, I go, I'm done. So it was a bit of a roundabout way in answering that, Mark.
Perfect. Thank you again. Such a range.
Well, then I'm going to go to this one. This is totally different. And here's my little girl in the purple field. That was a fantastic name. But where did the inspiration come from? Nowhere. I just discovered this little girl somewhere for my creative stash. And I just looked at her, and I'm going to zoom in. And it just reminded me of those 1930s, 40s, 50s photos of little children. And it actually is an old photo, I think from about the 40s, and someone has done the retouch work on it. And as soon as I saw this is one I purchased many years ago, I had to have her. And I've got to put her somewhere and just have fun. Now, the purple flowers is one of my own backgrounds that I've texturized, and I've used that. I've used my own textured sky to replace the sky. And then I put the little girl in the field. And so I'll just do it quick if you don't mind, Mark. There she is. So here's the little bit of layer and did a little bit of work. And I thought, okay, she's just standing in a field of weeds. And that's what it was. It was one of my own photos. She's standing in weeds. What can I do? Oh, hold on a minute. Creative stash. So I put the string or the rope. Now, some people would go, I'll put a kite, I'll put a balloon. And I went, I'm going to put a cup. Why? Because I can. It's a bit of fun. Then I thought it's missing something. Okay, I'll go into my stash. I put the bird. I like this little bird. It's one of my favourite ones. Bit of colour grading. Then again, I look at it and I think there's an imbalance. The cup, the bird, the rope are all on the right. They're filling in that composition. And for me, then I go, what can I put on the left that'll give it a little bit of balance? Now, some people might look at that now and go, that works. But for me, I was like, well, hold on a minute, let me try this. And that's when I put the cage in. And so then I look at the connection, the bird and the cage, and the rest is just colour grading. Was it inspired? No, I just had got the little girl and I wanted to put her somewhere and I had no idea. And so there's my little girl in the purple field. Whimsical, very soft muted colours, but I'm not looking for reality. And to me, but I can resonate with her because it just reminds us as a little child, whether it's a little girl just standing there, what are her dreams? What are her aspirations? What does she want to do? And there's the story, Mark. And I just thought I'd share some of those images with you to give you a little bit of an idea. And what I'm going to do is just come over and look at one more image. I had to add a little bit of Australiana in there. This one is what I call closed for business, the Sydney Opera House. And so the Sydney Opera House, this image represents that period of when the world changed in 2020. And for Australia, we were in quite a strong lockdown. Every country had their rules. But this was inspired by that lockdown. The world was closed. At this point in time when COVID came, I was actually working as a tour guide, travelling around Australia and New Zealand and taking Americans and British people around and showing my country. And then when COVID hit, there was no tourism. So I had to reinvent myself and I started to teach Photoshop online. But this image came about where the world stopped. And you can see, if you look in closer, there's the actual closed sign. The chair represents there's no one. And yet the sand is like the sands of time. And I wanted it to be dark and moody. And I wanted to give that feeling of desolation at that period of time. So what it's about is where different things can inspire me. And I get a story and I'll run with it and I'll just play with that. And then other times it's just basically, I'm just creating for fun. And I think that's really important, is creating with fun. So I hope, Mark, that sort of gave you some idea of just where some of my stories are coming from. So my last image that I wanted to share with you now, I'm a redhead. I've got that good Celtic background, Mark, from my ancestry, Irish, Scottish, bit of English thrown in. I have convicts in the family, Mark. So we'll just keep that quiet. So that's how I got the red hair. But this one was inspired by a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, and it's, "Woman is like a tea bag. You don't know how strong she is until you put her into hot water." And again, I saw this quote. I'd seen this quote years ago when I was coaching at elite level. I used to coach for Australia and my state in netball, and I used quotes a lot. And then I rediscovered the quote and I went, I'm going to create something that represents this. So this was generated using AI, but I had to do some serious problem solving on what I was going to do with her, because how she came out within AI, I'll just get it to, and I'll turn that off. She was sitting outside the cup, and I thought, well, that's not going to work. And I was like, oh, I don't like the décolletage there. I'm going to do a little bit of disguise work on that. So I had to work around. I put her into the cup. I used generative fill to give her a little bit of a shawl. Then I thought, look at her hands. What can I put in her hands? And I put bird in there. And then I just did colour grading, did a little bit of tidy up, all my little bits and pieces. I fixed up the bottom of the image, bit of textures, and there she is, the woman in the teacup, all based around a quote. And I did this probably a couple of years ago, Mark, and I still look at it and I think, yeah, I love it. But it helped me problem solve it, trying to get her into the cup. And that comes back to what we were talking about before, imagination versus skill set. And so I had to really dig into the toolbox to bring up some tools and techniques to try and work around it. So there you are, Mark, my woman in a teacup.
This is to go from the original image and to see all of this huge range of things is absolutely phenomenal. It's so few images. I don't mean that in a negative way, Sandra. See how you've been inspired and see what you've created. You mentioned here that this is perhaps a more recent one. Have you found that with the constant advances in AI, generative fill, the kind of wider opportunities that offers, have you found it's been easier to realize what's in your mind because those opportunities have increased at all?
Yeah, that's a really good observation and a question. And this is how I explain. For me, the advances in Photoshop, that's my tool. Photoshop, Nik Collection, and there's a number of other plugins that I use. The technology that's coming into Photoshop makes selections a lot easier. There's a lot of things. But where I'm now just unleashing my creativity and my imagination is combining AI and using that technology. For me, it's just another tool, but it's allowing me to create. I do get challenged or asked, you could photograph this. Well, where are we going to photograph a woman like this? Where am I going to photograph the red cardinals? We don't have them in Australia, that type of bird. This is where now the gloves are just off and I'm embracing this creativity. I also understand for some people that they want to do reality, they may want to do landscape or street photography, and that's fine. That's what speaks to their soul. This is what speaks to my soul. And you still have to use that human imagination. People do say, oh, you can create anything in AI. Yeah, you can. If you use 3 words, put a woman in a teacup, that's all I'll get. But in my prompts in this, I had to put woman sitting in a teacup. I can't remember the exact prompt, but I want a mystical forest in the background. I had to put those words in. Where do you get those words? It's from here, your imagination.
Yeah.
So that's the best way that I can explain it to you, Mark. This is just allowing me to be so creative.
I think there's a misconception that it's easy just because you can type something in. But you're right, the power is in the experience, the knowledge, what you do with it afterwards as well.
And then I think if I can just wrap that up too within that, Mark, is that this is what I'm doing. I'm creating in AI. I'm bringing it to Photoshop. I put her in the cup. I added the bird. I added all the color grading. I am using my creativity and imagination just in a different way.
Yeah.
And as I said before, if we all stay in the same box, it's boring. Some people like to push the boundaries, but there's my images. I hope that you enjoyed looking at the diversity and had a little bit of fun at looking at my quirky side, whimsical to the darker side with the bed and the little suitcase.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Now, Sandra, as well as coming back next week and your series that you're doing later in the year for Camversation, where can people go and see your work? Where's the best place? Where would you like to point them towards?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I have a website, Sandra Dan Imagery. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, YouTube channel. All of this is all evolved from 2020. And one door shuts, another door opens. So big plug, Sandra Dan Imagery. I was an adult educator, corporate trainer. So, Mark, teacher, it's in your blood. And so I teach online, but I have many umbrellas that I'm learning, and I love the creativity, and I'm passionate about what I do.
And it comes across as well. That's the thing. Is it?
I do. I have little names for all my little characters.
I wasn't going to mention that, but I felt you might do. I was really interested when you mentioned your stash of images, your stash of things that you pull on. I did want to say, Sandra, and maybe I shouldn't ask this question. How big is that stash? How many thousands of images are we talking about there?
Gosh, I can't tell you, but that was one big job I did in lockdown. I organised my creative stash, so I have animals, furniture, blood. I've just been collecting over the years, and it is pretty big. And sometimes, if I can hit on that, is that when I'm working on something, I have Lightroom open with my creative stash. And if I come to a block, I'll go in and look at my stash and I go, there's a letterbox. I can use that.
Yeah.
And it's very important to have a creative stash as a compositor and a creative.
Super.
But I'm not telling you how many.
No, I wouldn't know. It's fine. Thank you so much. Now, Sandra, getting through all those technical challenges today, I appreciate your professionalism and your persistence. So thank you so much for putting up with
it. It happens.
Oh my.
And thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to next week.
Likewise, hugely. Thank you so much, Sandra. See you then.